I guess my question is kind of about contemporary politics too. You know, like there's this text I know you're aware of, Agamben, and probably Judith Butler, you're also aware of the coming insurrection. And it's making the rounds now, and everyone's, on ZNet is debating, oh, it's nonsense, oh, it's great. And I was just wondering if you could say a few words about what you presume to be the importance or unimportance of the coming insurrection, and also what your position is on specifically insurrectionary anarchism versus revolutionary politics.
This book was written by friends of mine, and so it's difficult to ask to this question. But this, for instance, is a peculiar instance of our present situation when every political radical position which is outside the parliament is immediately rubricated as terrorism. Because these people, for the mere fact, fundamentally, of having written this book, and then for other things not sure at all, which have nothing of a terrorist crime, have been accused of terrorist association, no? And they risk 20 years of punishment. So this is another. The problem is that one, that today in Western so-called democratic countries, every political action outside parliament is classified as terrorism. This is a great problem. It is in Greece the same. We are seeing everywhere. Every political activity which is outside the parliament, precisely in the moment in which the parliament are destituted to any legitimacy, but precisely in this context, any activity outside parliament is equal to terrorism. That's the model of governance today. Yes?
But I think this is also very relevant to what Pablo brought into the conversation. Because in the end, we do not forget what is dislocating the question is not this vitalism that was brought. This vitalism is in the center of the issue. Because it is what conception of politics do we have in our mind? If we just want to see how we administer the configuration of the economy and the role of the citizen in the city, it is then a simple issue of, like we said right now, within the parliament. If it is a truly radical position, it will first of all happen outside this domain of the law and the parliament, and second of all, in the end, it will have to have inside it this decision of life, this decision of whether it is a true political act to kill a Nazi. In the end, you cannot go radical if you do not treat this issue. You will remain on, like what you said, okay, how do we discuss life and the organization of life and the structure of life? Yes, these are issues, but these are not political issues. This is just describing what is going on, and the other is describing how you can do something about it. And the vital question, the question of life is in the center of it. At least for the modern conception of politics, which is politics outside the parliament as of 1917.
Yeah, but you seem to imply that there is no other concept of politics except the one we get now, or we have since many centuries. So, if the perspective is this, I would say no. What is political is to create, to produce a form of life, and this can also imply to risk your life, of course. You can, but it's not that the decision of killing or being killed. This would be a Hobbesian model. No, this is Hobbes' model. But we are trying to think politics also different from this. So I agree. No, see, if you take the...
There is a difference. It's not that at some point we have to take the decision to kill another human. It's to kill a Nazi.
Nazi's a human.
Well, it makes a difference. Okay, let's hold on a second, okay? Because it seems to me that if, the only thing we're willing to call politics is the decision to put your life on the line or the decision to take another life, then we're actually in Camus' Les Justes. we're in Camus' Les Justes at that point, and the inflated subject position of the one who is the sovereign, who will decide who lives and who dies, even decide if I live or I die, and is actually functioning as the precondition of authentic politics. Okay, this is a very frightening position in my view. It's a very frightening position, and even if we understand ourselves as resistors, but we still see ourselves as the ultimate deciders who lives and who dies, and who's willing, who's brave enough, that's true politics, that strikes me as a kind of romantic, destructiveness. I think you can't. I think if you consider what makes for a sustainable life, and you think about decisions that we have to make about politics in terms of economic redistribution or in terms of the distribution of food, you are not being lazy. You are actually trying to think about what form of life is actually livable and sustainable. And people who are actively involved in those issues or in building shelters or in rebuilding demolished homes in Gaza are doing extremely important work by actually producing modes of living. And if you dismiss them as not putting themselves on the line or not deciding who dies, that's a real problem. And there's also a distinction between the idea of murdering a Nazi and being in favor of a law that might take the life of a war criminal, okay? And we might decide no on both, or we might decide yes on one and no on the other, but I'm not sure we can conflate these issues as quickly as they're being done right now. Somebody who hasn't spoken, who has not spoken. Yes, over here.
I've been concerned for a while that the question of the Holocaust becomes this limit case, and the Nazis the embodiment of evil for our day. Like you said, it's not a human, it's a Nazi. So then the question is just, how much do you hate the embodiment of evil?
How much,
the embodiment of evil enough? So perhaps we should reframe the debate, especially since I think most people here are Americans. Maybe we should consider some other event like the extermination of the native population of North America, and then think about that in terms of these same questions.
It's a good point. Giorgio, it's about 7. Do you want to say something final, or do you want to respond to this, or no?
Last question. There is a last question.
To add to that, yeah, sort of maybe what would be helpful to get kind of away from this vitalism, or from what you're saying is a politics that we imagine today, and then maybe just the frustration of not being able to get out of it. You can still paint a picture using some of the things we've already covered of a different, what's trying to be got at here, I think, through some idea of radical politics. Judith, you brought up with Hannah Arendt this idea that somehow Eichmann or the Nazis have committed a crime against a subjective plural, we humanity. And this we-ness is part of what sustains this sort of politics of commonality, of, like the George Carlin joke, of course we're pro-life, we're all alive, And what's trying to be gotten at here with this, well, what about sovereignty? Do we need to choose the dispersion of the sovereign? What about sovereign judgment? Is just a fundamentally different politics that wants to have like Antigone, it doesn't necessarily need to be her choice to die, but like maybe, I don't know, she wants to start a shoe franchise and she just doesn't give up, and it's about not giving up. But ultimately, I think this is going to lead us away from politics of precarious life and these sort of political issues we can think of, and leads us into more of a politics of subjectivity. Which, to conclude all this, makes me want to bring up the other Kafkan law scenario, not the bureaucratic one with no door, I can't get out, the stairs keep going around, but of the law that's always for you. What is the political relationship there? And that is, I think, what the radical politics that we're trying to present as an alternative. I don't know if they can be reconciled.
Should we conclude on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I totally followed you, and I'm sorry, because I'm reluctant to conclude in a moment of confusion. But if I could just ask for a slight clarification.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you're referring to as radical politics, and I'm not sure, yeah, I can't follow your map exactly. Is there a simpler way to?
Well, I'm actually kind of trying to use that term as what I've heard from people who have an interest in setting up I would say it's a politics that is concerned with things prior to what you consider political issues, which today are often revolve around issues of vitalism or I like the phrase precarious life. Something having to do with subjectivity. What does it mean, like in the Kafka allegory, to be a subject before not a juridical law, but the law, and abstracted away from anything other than its relationship to the subject.
And this is what you'd like us to turn our attention to?
I was thinking maybe by turning our attention to it, we would have some place for our attention to fall when we keep struggling to get out of a politics of our imagination and what we've been discussing so far.
Yeah, okay. All right, a kind of Kafka moment. Kind of beginning, ending with Kafka, which is really complicated, you know? Look, I think there are all kinds of issues here. I'm sorry we've only had an hour to raise them without being able to pursue them. But I want to thank Giorgio and his class for joining us. Okay, thank you.